Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We welcome you here to race number 12, playoff race number 2 of season 51 of the RTG Talladega Challenge. I'm Seth Cole, soon to be joined by Zach Freemow as we're getting set to find out who is going to move on to the round of 8. That's right, it's the first elimination race of the playoffs. 10 drivers started, 2 drivers will be eliminated, 8 drivers will move on to the next round of the playoffs. One driver that we already know is locked in is Joe DeSpirito, the defending champion, picked up his first win of the season last week in the playoffs opening race, and now has the pressure off of him. We'll have to see if maybe he tries going 2 for 2 here at the start of playoffs. But there's a number of drivers that are in the field here tonight. They just want to go to victory lane, and the driver we're going to talk it here tonight for our pre-race driver is still looking for his first top 10 finish of the season, and that is Rodney Sullins. Hey Rodney, it's us up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah, 10-4.
Man, you're making your 4th start of the season here tonight. We've seen you be up there at the front at a number of the races that you've been in, but you just haven't had that luck there at the end. What do you got to do here tonight to try and get yourself up there to the front in the closing stages, maybe have a shot at the checkered flag?
Man, just hopefully pick the right line. I've had a really good time here. It's been a lot of fun. There's a lot of good drivers here. Just seems to be I picked the wrong line at the when it's time to go, and maybe avoid somebody else's mishap or something. That kind of got me last week. But having a blast. Just hope I pick the right line.
Now, obviously, we know this is a super speedway. Everybody racing in close proximity to each other, 3 wide. We've seen 4 wide on occasion. This is the elimination race for the drivers in the playoffs. So how much is that in the back of your mind, knowing that a lot of these drivers you're racing around are trying to advance into that next round, but at the same time, you're trying to get up there and win this race?
Well, yes, sir. They talked about before the race, treat them like anybody else, and that's what I plan on doing. Obviously, I don't want to put them in any kind of position that that may cause an accident or something. But I do want to race with them, race for the win, push one of them for the win, whatever it takes. But treat them like anybody else. But again, I don't want to put them in a spot I wouldn't want to be put in.
Well, Rodney, obviously, we wish you luck here tonight. We know you're gunning for your first top 10 finish of the season. And as you said, hopefully you can pick that right line there at the end, have that line move to the front, and maybe be able to take the checkered flag here.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. You guys do a great job. I watched this for about 2 or 3 weeks before I started my first race. So thank you, guys. You did a fantastic job.
So Rodney Sullins, along with, I believe, 29 other drivers, are going to be getting ready to take the green flag here tonight. We now have Zach Freemow with us. Zach, a lot of pressure here on about 6-7 drivers because they could easily either move in or fall out as far as that top 8 is concerned.
Absolutely, Seth. We saw this last week toward the end of the race when we had that last big wreck that took out a couple, big name title contenders, a couple guys that we thought, coming into this season or coming into this chase rather, would be guys that we would have to watch out for, really watch out for in the first week. And of course, those two I'm talking about being Grant Wesley and Jess Shelton. They had that wreck, man, and what that's done to them in points is that's dropped Grant down to the 6th position, so he's 1 position above the cutoff right now. But Jess is in a sort of, it's a do or die situation for Jess right now, with that 8th position in points tonight being a cutoff race. So hopefully we don't see too much calamity here and everybody can bring it home clean. However, this is Talladega, a lot of unknowns. That big wreck could take out a lot of contenders early and often, so we'll have to see what happens.
If there's a type of track you don't want to be going into for an elimination race, it's a super speedway where positions can change 3, 4, 5 times in just the course of a lap. And as mentioned, there's 3 drivers here tonight that look like they may be in good shape, and I'm going to put one of those at a little bit of italics because I'm going to get to him in just a moment. But Joe DeSpirito, we know, was locked in with his win last week. Bob Seminara comes into this race 30 points above the cut line, so pretty much as long as he doesn't finish dead last, I think he's going to advance into the round of 8. The guy that I'm wondering about here, I thought coming into this race, he looked like he was in pretty good shape. That's Chuck McClure, but he was not able to make it into tonight's event. So, with 29 drivers in the field here tonight and the gap between him and the 8th in the standings cutoff line being only 23 points, it is mathematically possible McClure may not be moving on to the next round.
Yes, and unfortunately, McClure has had some technical issues over the last couple weeks that he's been trying to battle through and get into these races, but so far has not proven frugal yet. So hopefully, nothing too major happens. However, I'm not sure exactly how it is that they're planning on scoring this. Will it be a provisional? Because if it's a provisional, he at least gets last place points. I would say he could be okay. But again, it's a long shot. If we have somebody say like Mark Paglia, who's sitting in 10th in points right now, come out and win this race tonight, that shakes up everything and could put a couple guys, who we would expect to see advancing, in the doghouse and out of it come next week.
Certainly a big question mark here. And, as you said, if he does get the provisional points, we may not exactly officially know the 8 drivers that are moving on until we actually get the official word on what the situation is going to be for that 17 of Chuck McClure, who came into this race third in the playoff standings prior to the technical problems that you just alluded to. We'll get to the starting lineup here in just a moment, but set the stage here as well for what the points look like coming into this race, who's in trouble, who really needs a good run. We mentioned about Jessica Shelton. She is the cutoff line driver here tonight, 8th in the standings. Dante Ricky, 4th in points, is 12 points ahead of the cut line. Bernie Mobs, who is 5th, he is 6 points ahead of the cut line. Grant Wesley and Josh Metallic, they're tied for 6th right now. They are 2 points ahead of the cut line. Shelton, we already mentioned, is the cutoff line driver. Billy Elliser is 9th. He's only 1 point back, and Mark Paglia in 10th is only 3 points back. So, I mean, it is super, super close, especially from 4th down through that 10th position.
Well, absolutely, and with this style of playoff format that we run under, which is very much like the one that NASCAR is using, um, a win cures all ills. You can come from anywhere. You can be a Mark Paglia, a Billy Elliser, a Jess Shelton. You can be anybody. If you can pull that thing into victory lane, that automatically punches your ticket into next week. So I wouldn't be surprised to see if some of those drivers get a little bit of aggressive. We haven't seen any of those guys or gals, I should say, run that badly. We saw everybody that we have in this top 10 in points. It was a recurring theme that we talked about running through. Really consistent. Having very few issues, and the playoffs, not the time to have them.
Absolutely not. As we're going to give you your starting lineup for tonight's event. No surprise, it's Joe DeSpirito back on the pole. He's, of course, looking for back-to-back victories here during the first round of the playoffs. He'll start alongside of Bernie Mobs, Bob Seminara and Tim Knopfsker in row 2, Josh Metallic and Jessica Shelton in row 3, Donnie Garrett and Mark Paglia in row 4, Grant Wesley and Billy Elliser will complete your top 10. Chris Elliott and Jerem Lewis are 11th and 12th. Dante Ricky, I believe, is the only playoff contender that qualified outside of the top 10. He's 13th with Jeremy Jeffries 14th. Row 8 is Wiley Coate and Glenn Harris. Row 9, Sonny Tallman, Rodney Sullins. Chris Emery and Dave Melson complete the top 20. It's Jim Black making, I think, his first start of the season, 21st, alongside Robbie Nisus. Row 12, Richard Martin, Stephen Martell. Row 13, Bob Dixon, John Godfrey. And the rest of the field, drivers that did not take time, Cy Jones, Bobby Farrow, Wayne Pribnow, and Perry Bond, as the 12th race of the season at Talladega is green.
Seth, I just got to give you a little bit of a compliment. I really love it when you do the starting lineup because it just sounds so good and it sounds so fluid, and you do it in, such a crunch sort of manner as they're coming down to the green flag. Just want to compliment you on such a job well done, you and the rest of FRN. They bring him out of turn 2 right now. DeSpirito still holding the lead over Seminara. They're single file in the middle line. Doubled up behind them will be the 39 Metallic, the 90 Mobs. Metallic now being pushed by the 77 of Garrett and Wesley down low. They will occupy that third line, or that inside line, going through 3 and 4.
Oh, man, that is so treacherous going into turn 3. You see that side-by-side warping of Bob Seminara in that 712. Metallic, Garrett, Wesley, all those guys got a big run down the back straightaway on the inside, something we normally don't see on initial restarts of this race. They tried to pinch that outside line up, but because the 712 is going side to side, they don't have that luxury for fear they may get warped into.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's one of those things that, we'll see these guys run, so well, so solid out here on the racetrack, and all of a sudden, one of those connection issues, that's real bad. I actually thought that he made contact with the 77 at that point, but like you said, he's in a really bad spot there. Being in the middle line, that's not good, but the only place he's got to go is in the wall or back down into traffic right now as they work their way into turn 3.
The Monero looks like he is going to courteously drop to the back until his connection problems settle out. And of course, obviously that's a huge blow for Bob Seminara, who'd love to pick up his third win of the season, be dominating up here at the front. But as I said, the good news is he is really the only other driver besides Joe DeSpirito that looks like he will be advancing into the round of 8 for sure, since he came into this race so far ahead of the cut line. And based on the number of drivers we had take the green flag here tonight, as long as he finishes up inside, I think, of the top 25, he's automatically moving on.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, Seth, as long as there's no incident on there in the track, I don't even think that he's going to be in that big of trouble. We saw a couple weeks ago when he lost third gear, which really, really handicapped him on restart. So every restart, he had to fall to the back, but he would gradually, very slowly and patiently make his way back up until he was back up contending for the lead, like DeSpirito and Metallic are right now in the middle of 3 and 4. Side by side, it looks like that bottom and middle line are the places to be, looking pretty even tonight, as opposed to what we've seen in the past where that middle line has had a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, definitely shocked to see that inside line getting momentum like it is, because to your point, we've seen that middle line, if you even get 7, 8 cars lined up there, they're able to hold off 12, 13 cars in the inside line, but Metallic has been able to stay at least side by side with Joe DeSpirito up to this point. You have to wonder, though, if more drivers start migrating up to that second and third line, if that inside line's going to start losing momentum. But for the time being, they're holding court, and now a third line starting to form. Jeremy Jeffries, Wiley Coke going up there, trying to pick up Rodney Sullins. I believe that was also Seminara and John Godfrey in the 712 and the 711.
Yeah, and what I'm seeing right now, I think what the major issue is for this middle line, I don't think Mobs can get up to the back bumper of the 24 of DeSpirito quite the way that Seminara was doing. I've been watching the last couple laps, and it's looked as though DeSpirito has a little bit of that side-to-side wiggle like Bob Seminara did. It seemed to have evened itself out right now, but much to their dismay, they are the only 3 cars in the middle line, being Joe DeSpirito, Bernie Mobs, Tim Nofsker. Josh Metallic, Donnie Garrett, Grant Wesley, they will continue to lead that line on the inside, while that third line, being led by the 94 of Jessica Shelton, works its way to the outside of the 24 and 90 going into turn 3.
Paglia jumped up there, Shelton jumped up there, and now Nofsker jumps up there, and he's going to lead that outside line. He actually had the lead for a brief moment going into 3, but he rode up to the hill just a tiny little bit there. That gives the inside line the advantage, as right now, the Florida boys, they're stuck in the sucker hole.
Yeah, right now it looks like Josh, Donnie, and Grant, they have a really good groove going right now. They're hooked up. They're making a lot of speed down low, but I would definitely say watch out with Nofsker now in the lead in that what was the third line up top. He's now migrated down low with the 94 of Shelton. They're at about the 4th car back alongside the number 9 of Chris Elliott and Dante Ricky coming out of turn 2.
Josh Metallic in that 39 leading the way. Donnie Garrett in the 77. Actually, last week got his first podium finish of the season after being in the conversation for the win in the final 3 laps for the past 4 weeks. But last week was the first time out of all those weeks that he actually was able to salvage a decent finish. Grant Wesley right behind him there in the 88. Now, Metallic comes into this race with Grant Wesley tied for 6th, 4 points ahead of the cut line. So are they right now focused on just staying ahead of that 94, or is there just too much going on at a super speedway? You can't really rely on that kind of strategy.
Well, I think there's a little bit too much going on, and keep in mind, we're only 7 laps in, so we've got 60 laps remaining still. I think at this point, everybody's just trying to figure out what lines are working better right now. As we've already mentioned, it seems like that low line being the really quick line right now, predominantly over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've seen that middle line be the quick line. So this might be throwing these guys a little bit of a culture shock as they work their way down into turn 3. Right now, leaders still Josh Metallic, Donnie Garrett, Grant Wesley, Chris Elliott, and Dante Ricky will make up the first 5 cars down low before Nofsker is on the outside of him, being now pushed by the 28 of Paglia. Jess Shelton in the 94 has worked her way down to the bottom of the racetrack, following Ricky into the trioval.
Now remember, Dante Ricky started the furthest back of our playoff contenders, back in the 13th position, already up inside of the top 5. We're now 8 laps into this race, and there is already a driver that's hoping for a caution to come out. I noticed the 54 of Robbie Nisus has lost the draft last time around on the back straightaway. So currently the 54, hoping and praying that a yellow will be able to save him. Not even sure running by himself, even if these guys are racing through wide ahead of him, if he's got enough space that he'd be able to catch the draft back up. How about the 616 of Jerm Lewis, that unsponsored Ford Mustang? He's there on the inside line right behind Jessica Shelton, currently in the 7th position. And, we talked with Rodney Sullins. There's a number of drivers here tonight that are not battling for the playoffs, not battling for the championship, and the admin's made it clear in drivers' meeting. Race these drivers the same way you would have raced them in the first race of the season, regardless of if they're a playoff contender or not.
Absolutely, and you don't want anybody to roll over and just back off and not race. Keep in mind, yes, this is the playoffs, but we still have the entire playoff grid left. It's not like we've gotten down into elimination races, where we only have 7 cars or we only have 4 cars or however it is that however many they're chopping off at a time. But right now, everybody's going for wins, and those guys that weren't able to make their way into the playoffs, they still want to prove themselves. They still want to show, hey guys, maybe I wasn't able to get it done during the regular season, but it wasn't because I couldn't get it done. It's because this is Talladega super speedway racing.
A couple of things that I'm noticing here tonight that we have not seen in the past couple of weeks. We already alluded to the fact that inside line was actually getting a lot better momentum that we've recently seen. I'm also seeing a couple more drivers having some internet problems. I don't know if this is a server issue. We already saw Bob Seminara was warping. You talked about the 24 of Despirito. I'm also seeing a little side-by-side there out of the 80 of Grant Wesley. And a third thing I'm noticing, I've seen at least 5 drivers here in the last 5 laps touching the apron down through 3 and 4.
Yeah, and that's something that can be extremely treacherous if these guys aren't careful. Basically, what they're doing is they're trying to use the momentum of the draft, and every once in a while, when you can work it out to the outside line, when you're holding that bottom line, you've got a lot of room between that yellow line and that dotted line out there. But sometimes you can kind of swing it out and bring it back down the racetrack just to hold momentum a little bit better. But if you're not careful and you clip that apron, that can cause a lot of problems and, take out a lot of cars in a real short amount of time.
Right now, we've had our top 6, top 7 all single file, and I was watching the 088 of Tim Nofsker trying to make forward progress. Apparently, other drivers noticed it too. Shelton, Ricky, and Elliott all jump up to the second group through 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, the 39, the 77, and the 88, they were making a lot of speed. They've been the fastest cars on the bottom of the racetrack all night long. So I think these guys have kind of figured out, hey, if we're going to get past them, we're going to have to, get together and figure something out. 77 of Garrett looked like he might have touched the apron just a little bit in turn 3. I'm kind of surprised it happened that soon and not out of 4, rather. But Chris Elliott, Dante Ricky, and Jess Shelton are making progress in the outside line. It looks like the number 9 is going to be right on the door panel, the 77 cars they cross the start finish line.
Yeah, they had to get themselves reformulated up there through 3 and 4. Chris Elliott got a little bit out of shape on the back straightaway. I don't know if he just was trying to line up his bumper with Dante Ricky, or if the two of them made a little contact, but they were all able to save it, all keep it going. And for the time being, they continue to make forward progress as caution is out for the first time today.
It's going to be the number 60 car of Perry Bond. It looks like his car is blown up in turns 1 and 2. There was also a little bit of contact between him and what I believe is the 54 car. The 54 appeared to be stuck on his left rear quarter panel as Bond rode the wall. He tried to keep it up the racetrack to keep it out of harm's way, but unfortunately, with that engine blowing up the way that it did, it is going to be our first yellow out here on lap number 13.
I'm also noticing the 13 of Dave Melson back there. It was hard to tell if he had any contact or if he had just lost the draft. We'll go back and take a look at that as well, as Perry Bond and the number 60 going to bring out the first caution of the evening here on lap 12. Obviously, well short of when these drivers are planning on making their first pit stop, and we'll have to see if things go into a long green flag run after this yellow flag, if we end up having some strategy come into play in the closing stages of this race.
Well, another thing that I'm kind of wondering about right now is we're going to get a chance to, refill these cars with fuel. Everybody's going to probably take at least 2 tires. I want to see if that 39, the 77, and the 88 will be able to maintain contact with each other. As you see, they are running in positions 1, 3, and 5 right now. So assuming they come out of the pits in the same way, those same 3 cars would be leading the field to the restart. Outside line would then be dictated by Chris Elliott, Dante Ricky, and Jess Shelton. We've seen the cars that hypothetically would be lining up on the inside, making a lot of speed down there today. So we'll have to see if green flag or yellow flag pit stops here can shake things up just a little bit.
It's going to be open this time, as looks like Metallic is indicating he's going to come down. More than likely, will lead everyone down pit road with him. We may have a couple of drivers stay out, trying to get some bonus points for laps led, and I almost wonder if it might be a strategy, and there's my answer. I wondered if maybe some of our playoff contenders down near that cut line might think about staying out. Yes, they'd give up track position, but they'd have that bonus point for a lap led that they may not get for the remainder of this race.
Yeah, that definitely didn't happen. It looks like we still have just 2 cars remaining out on the racetrack, one being the 54 of Nisus, who was involved in that incident. And Cy Jones is going to go up there and get himself a lap led as well. We've seen Cy run well here in the past. He did have that 3rd place finish. I think it was 4 or 5 weeks ago. We didn't get a chance to talk to him, but we know he can get it done. Off pit road, looks like everybody's taking fuel and tires. Metallic leads them off with Elliott, Ricky, 77 of Garrett, Grant, Wesley rounding out your top 5. Looks like Knopfler is going to come off 6. Jess Shelton coming off 7th. The number 616 car, as you mentioned earlier, Seth, of Germ Lewis, still having an excellent run here tonight. He will come off pit road in position 8. Despirito and Paglia rounding out your top 10.
Going to be interesting to watch. Despirito, Mobs, Seminara, they kind of got faded back. Both Mobs and Despirito got caught in the middle line there under that run. Seminara dropped back due to some connection issues. Be interesting to watch them try and work their way back up here to the front, because it's been a while since we've actually seen, if not just one, all 3 of them up at the front rather consistently.
Oh, and we know when they line them up front, they always make a lot of speed together. That's why everybody, kind of looks out for those guys. And I think it was Despirito that we heard talking about it last week. It's kind of getting a little bit concerned. Hey, guys are going to take notice of this. We might have to start playing defense here pretty soon, because we're going to have guys not wanting to work with us out on the racetrack, because they know when the 3 of us get together, we make a lot of speed and they're hard to get by.
Metallic was a winner last season. His win came during the regular season. He's trying to see if he can lock up a ticket into the round of 8 with his first trip to victory lane here in season 51, as we're waiting for Cy Jones and Robbie Nisus to make the left-hand turn down pit lane, and looks like they both will come down this time. Nope, Robbie Nisus is going to stay out and lead a lap here, get himself a bonus point. He'll probably be in the next time around. Perry Bond has taken his car back to the garage area after the engine expired. We'll have to also find out about the damage sustained by Dave Melson, because as we saw in the replay, he just had absolutely nowhere to go. That engine let loose on Perry Bond's Ford, and the car just deaccelerated so quickly that Dave Melson had no reaction time, especially since he at that time was committed to the outside line.
Absolutely. So that's going to hurt Dave. Definitely, it's important to keep those aerodynamics intact as best as you can. But with a big pack like this and a lot of race left to go, we've seen drivers, get top 5, top 10 finishes based solely out of attrition. So as long as he can get that car up to speed in the draft, I think he's going to be okay. Assuming he doesn't have too much damage, he might be all right. We'll have to see what happens here at the green flag.
Right now, if we're looking at the battle for the cutoff line area, of the drivers that were tied for 6th on down through 10th, they were separated by only 7 points. Right now, those drivers are running as follows. Metallic is in 2nd. He will probably cycle around to the lead when the 54 comes to pit road. Dante Ricky is in 4th. Grant Wesley is in 6th. Jessica Shelton 8th. Mark Paglia currently in 11th. Bernie Mobbs currently in 12th. And Billy Elliser 14th. So they're all still close. I mean, it's gotten to the point where the points are this close in an elimination race that more than likely it's fruitless trying to figure out what the calculations are until the checkered flag waves, because as stated before, so many positions change hands so many times in the course of just one circuit around this 2.66 mile superspeedway.
Well, and that's true. Unless we get an act of God, it's more than likely that we're going to be, receiving the green flag with 50 laps to go. And if something happens, in the case of where they're running right now with 50 laps to go, being the exact same spot that they finish 50 laps from now, either we need to start being gamblers, Seth, or, we need to start finding a different race form to watch, because I certainly don't believe that's going to happen by any means. Every one of those cars, they're still in good position, don't have too much damage. They're running in the draft still. Everybody, once again, will be bunched back up when we come back green here. So a lot of spots, a lot of positions to be made up. And with 50 laps, there's just no way to go, Seth. We've seen it so many times now. where they'll have such a good race going, it's looking clean and green, and then we'll just have a massive unexpected pileup, or these phantom caution, or we'll finish the race on a gas mileage run with 4 laps remaining. You just never know how it's going to play out. So you're keeping an eye on those guys, but you're not too worried about it until you probably get within 5-10 laps to go.
Now, this series runs a fixed setup. They have it set up where the engine is not supposed to blow up. We saw Perry Bond's engine let go, and Zach, I know you've been in races, so have I, where there's this weird kind of thing on NR Online races where someone will receive a random blow up. So I'm assuming that's what happened to the 60 of Perry Bond. I very much doubt the engine let go due to overheating. But is that in the back of the mind of some of these playoff contenders of, is this a random blow up or is this not a random blow up? And do I have to keep, well, I've got one eye on my mirror, one eye out the windshield, but I also got to figure out which eye is going to keep an eye on my gauges.
Well, I think it's always something that's a little bit in the back of your mind, but it's so rare that any of these cars blow up unless you have the number 4 on your side panel. So I don't think that's anything anybody's too worried about right now. This is a setup that these guys run week in, week out. They know the sort of things that they need to be keeping an eye on as far as RPMs are concerned, oil and water temperatures, and they've got those pretty much perfected. So it's just kind of one of those freak accidents thing, like you see, every day in real life racing, where you can have the best sort of engine package and builder in the world, but every now and then something just lets go. Mechanically nothing's perfect, so it's just something that happens. Worried about it? No, I don't think so. Could it happen? Sure, it could ruin a lot of guys' days if it happened up front even.
Well, with Nisus coming to pit road, it now turns the race lead back over to Josh Metallic. He'll start alongside of Chris Elliott, Dante Ricky, and Donnie Garrett in the second row. Grant Wesley, Tim Nofsker behind them. Rest of the top 10, Jessica Shelton, Jerem Lewis, Joe DeSpirito, and Mark Paglia. And looking at that 08 of Tim Nofsker, I mean, he's got something that he's got for a goal here coming to the end of the season, and that's be top of the list in terms of the statistics of most wins this season. Right now, he has 2, along with Grant Wesley and Bob Seminara, as well as Dante Ricky.
Well, and it's entirely feasible that he could do so. He's one of those drivers that I wouldn't, be surprised to see get a couple more wins before the end of the season, assuming he starts all of those events. Green flag back out at the line. Josh Metallic got just about a half car length lead on the number 9 of Elliott as they work their way down into turn 1. Side by side, Metallic still holding that bottom line, being pushed by Dante Ricky and Grant Wesley. The number 9 of Chris Elliott now falling back just about a car length or two, being pushed by the 77 of Garrett off turn 2.
Let's see if that middle line, as we're used to seeing, actually gets the momentum here down the back straightaway. Metallic expecting it as he moves up, tries to block the advances of Chris Elliott, but leaves the door open on the inside for Dante Ricky and almost got himself split 3 wide.
Yeah, and these guys are getting really racy. It's super speed. It's a really kind of strange sort of phenomena where every race, every restart at every track, you want to make up as much ground as you can, but especially with super speedways, man, you want to be the car up front. You want to be either the car that's leading the pack or the car that's pushing the car that's leading the pack, and if you can get there as quickly as possible, that's the best way to go. Not as maybe not quite as easy on more technical racetracks, whereas you have to really depend on the momentum and the push that you're getting from behind you. As you see, like right now, the 39, he's not getting much of a push from the number 9 of Elliott right now at all. And the 84 of Ricky, Grant Wesley, and 94 of Shelton, they're really taking advantage of that down the backstretch because the 39 just can't get to the door of the 84. If he could get to the door, they might be able to do something with him, but they're just kind of hanging back there about a car length in that middle line.
Ooh, that 9 of Chris Elliott, he went up just a little bit there in the corner. I thought he was going to come back down and get hooked off the nose of Donnie Garrett as we're 3 wide further back. That's former winner this season, Jeremy Jeffries, leading the charge. He's got Wiley Coate, Rodney Sullins, and a number of others up there with him as Dante Ricky leading his first laps of the race. Got his first lap led just moments ago and now leads his second. Of course, Dante Ricky, a 2-time winner during the regular season, comes into this race currently 12 points ahead of the cut line. And speaking of the playoffs, with the early departure of the 60 of Perry Bond, it's now official. Bob Seminara has moved into the round of 8.
Well, that's gonna make Bob very happy. He doesn't have to worry about too much the rest of this race. Everybody better watch out. Grant Wesley making the move to the inside of Dante Ricky in 3 and 4. He's got the position. He's now being pushed by the 94 of Shelton. Ricky is faded up to that middle line, which now only has 3 cars, and they're being overtaken on the outside line by the 77 of Donnie Garrett and company coming across the line.
3 wide for the 3rd position right now between Despirito, Ricky, and Garrett. Garrett in that purple 77 leading the charge on the top side. They're losing a tiny bit of momentum there, kind of stalled out for a brief moment. Comes down almost into the door of Dante Ricky, trying to pinch him down. That's a little close coming off of turn 2.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if that was even so much of a pinch. It looked like Ricky may have been, car hard to the inside. It looked like the 26 Billy Elliser. He almost got turned at the end of the back straightaway. It looks like everybody's going to sort it out, playing nicely now, but it looks like that bottom line has kind of fallen apart just a little bit. Now just 5 cars leading that bottom line.
Great save there by Billy Elliser, and very courteous of Bob Seminara to let him back in line, because that was entering into a corner, and that could have been treacherous if the 712 hadn't lifted. Right now you've got your top 6 all single file. Now make it 7 as Ricky gets clear. It's now side by side, double wide behind them, and 3 wide as there might have been some contact between Donnie Garrett and Chris Elliott. That opens up the door for Jeremy Jeffrey, so we've had a couple of near moments out of 2.
Yeah, I didn't see exactly what happened, but something happened with that 77 car. He lost a ton of momentum, and that entire top line fell about halfway back in the field. Donnie Garrett still trying to get back up to speed. He's fallen back to, I would say, probably around 18th or 19th at this point. Just can't get it going. That bottom line now leading, coming toward the line, though. It looks like they've still got a pretty good run. However, Mark Paglia looking to make something work on the middle line with a push from the 088 of Nofsker into turn 1.
Right now, the 3 drivers that come into this race, either the cut line driver or behind the cut line, are running up inside the top 10. Shelton in 2nd, Paglia in 5th, and Ellis are currently holding down the 9th position. These drivers know they have to be up here towards the front. They have to basically be in the conversation all race long. They're not necessarily in a must-win situation, but they've got to keep themselves around the rest of their competition just in case something happens, as Talladega is known to have happen around every corner.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the truth. You want to, like I said earlier, the thing that you want to do, for probably about the first 50 to 55 laps of this race is just keep everybody in sight. If you can keep a line of sight on your fellow playoff competitors, I think you're pretty comfortable. Unless you're leading, then you're not comfortable, you're happy. However, if you're all the way back in the pack and you can't see any of those guys, that's a bad spot to be in. But right now, everybody's stuck pretty close together.
Starting to see a little bit of side to side again between the 88 and the 24. Just hope it settles out, or at least stays at that kind of a side by side. That sometimes is actually manageable for drivers if it's just that tiny bit of side to side. It's when they start moving 1 or 2 lanes, that's when it starts to get treacherous, especially with the fact too, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago where there was a point in the race we ended up having 2 lanes, but they were both sharing the middle groove. When you're racing that close, the last thing you want is the car beside you to be warping.
Absolutely. That's something we've seen a lot the last 2 weeks, but it's not people sharing lane. Well, it is a little bit of people sharing lanes that we got to worry about. Looked like the 088 and the 43 might have gotten together at the exit of the tri-oval. A little bit of door banging. Not sure if the 43 of DMAR might have gotten a little damage or not there, but Jess Shelton was making good progress in that middle line, and that outside line just came out of nowhere right now. About 4 cars back, Dante Ricky is the 4th car on the inside line, but then we see our first 3 wide. Shelton has now moved herself down the racetrack, and Paglia leads that top line right now. That Paglia, as I say that, works his way back down to the middle.
Yeah, first time we've mentioned Richard Martin here tonight, and you're right, he along with Chris Elliott and Jeremy Jeffries, they had a heck of a run from the tri-oval over towards turn 1. And everybody on the inside middle line, we're trying to figure out, do I want to go up there? Do I want to try and stop the momentum? And it got wadded up there going into the first corner last lap around, but now things settled out again. And it seems to be that this has happened not once but twice, where the middle line and the outside line, they get such good momentum. Those drivers on the inside notice it. They go up to try and keep the momentum going, but instead they kind of stifle that run out.
Well, and anybody that, I think something that we're seeing. It's kind of like the wave effect, we'll call it. When a wave comes up to shore, it comes up, it comes real aggressively, and then it all just kind of recedes back again. Give it another 4 or 5 laps here. I have no doubt that we're going to see another third line. Right now, it looks like Dante Ricky, he's getting bored on that inside line. He was running in 4th place. He's now jumped up to that middle lane in front of the number 28 of Paglia. We'll have to see if Paglia can give him a good shot here heading off into turn 1 so they can make up some ground on the Florida gang right now.
Yeah, maybe what Dante Ricky was doing there, I would have thought that'd been too early to jump out, but as I said as well, with drivers jumping out rather late, it's stalling out the momentum of the outside line. With Dante jumping out there, he lost a couple of spots, but at the same time, he didn't really stifle the momentum that Paglia, Novsker, and Metallic had.
And it's really dependent on what sort of a gap you have on those cars that are coming up on you too. Because if you wait till the end of the backstretch and those cars in the middle line have a big run, they can't hit you going into turn 3. So if you're going 2 or 3 miles an hour slower than what those cars are, they're either going to have to try to overtake you on the outside line, or it's going to completely stall out that line altogether. But we did see there was about 8 or 9 cars that were single file on the bottom, and as we said, give it 3 or 4 laps, everybody is side by side by side by side for about 10 rows deep, working through 1 and 2 again.
Yeah, absolutely side by side all the way through the field. Right now, Dante Ricky and Grant Wesley trying to see who's going to edge out ahead on that inside or outside line. Now we're starting to see a couple of drivers in that middle line stepping out. That is Chris Elliott and Rodney Sullins. We'll have to see if that affects that middle line in any way, shape, or form in terms of momentum. Dante was almost clear on Grant Wesley going into 3, but Wesley back on the bottom with help from pole sitter Joe DeSpirito.
Yeah, and I think the 84 being pushed by the 28, it's just a faster tandem right now. I think they've got cars, 3 or 4 deep in that middle line that are all pushing together, but it looks like Bernie Mob's in the 90 car, maybe just a little bit hesitant to get to the 24 as much, and we see Jess Shelton, she had about a quarter of a car length lead between her and the back bumper of the 90 going into turn 1. So it's a game of momentum. Right now, the middle line seems to have it, but we do have the third line forming again. Chris Elliott in the number 9 Doritos Dodge. He's about 4 cars back on the very extreme high line being pushed by Sullins, but they're making decent progress toward the front.
Sullins, Coat, as well as it looked like I saw the machine of Stefan Martel up there, and I think I also saw Glenn Harris. First time I mentioned him tonight. He's up there along with Robbie Nisus. About 12 laps to be complete here on this green flag run. And right now, everybody is still up in this lead pack. Nobody is straggled behind. Nobody has lost the draft. And Elliott's got the momentum. He's now gotten himself up 3 wide for the 8th position.
Yeah, those guys are really going for it right there. I wouldn't be surprised as long as they can keep that top line in order. One of 2 things is going to happen. Either a couple of those guys from that middle line are going to jump out there because they're going to want that push, or another lap or 2, we're going to see the number 9 car right up toward the front competing with the 88 and the 84, who are now side by side working their way into turn 3 and 4, both respectively getting pushes from the 24 of DeSpirito and Paglia, the 90 of Bernie Mobs, Tim Novsker running in 6th. Those guys, they're just kind of chilling out right now, but I'm really telling you, man, I think we got to watch out for that top line. I have a feeling, give it another 2 or 3 laps, they're going to be right up there with them.
Is it just coincidence, or is it just based off of the way the circumstances are out there on the track? We start to see the 3 wide battling take place when we start closing in on the potentiality of green flag pit stops, because these drivers are about 5-6 laps away from when they're going to have to make a pit stop under green should we not see a caution prior to that.
Oh, I saw the number 143 there, Bob Dixon. He blinked out for just a second. Bad spot to have that happen. Everything, oh, there he goes again. That's not something you want to see, not when everybody's running this tight. But to your point about, everybody getting a little bit more aggressive coming up on pit stops, we saw it last week. We got green flag pit stops again last week. And you want to be able to maintain that track position as best as you can, because you never know what's going to happen coming to the pits. You could have a couple guys lose it. You might have a caution, or you might keep everybody together, in which case, you've really got to work hard, because it's very rare that we see everybody come in on the same exact lap.
We wondered about the damage on the 13 of Dave Melson getting caught up in the first caution when he ran into the back of the 60 of Perry Bond when Bond's engine let go in turn 1. Well, the answer is that car is still up to speed. He is 5th on that outside line. First time tonight, he's up in the top 10.
Yeah, and that's one of those things. Just in the middle of the draft, it doesn't hurt you so much aerodynamically. It's when you're the first or second car leading a line, that's when you got to kind of worry about it right now. But he's having absolutely no issues running currently in 10th. I think he's probably pretty happy with that, considering the way that the race started off. This is a good place to be in. Right now, we see Bob Dixon has moved up to that third line, or up front. Dante Ricky still with the advantage over Paglia. It looks like Paglia is giving him just enough of a shove that Paglia is now to the outside of the 88 of Wesley on that inside line. Again, we're seeing that inside line come to life despite the fact that there's many more cars on that bottom line.
Yeah, but what we're also seeing here is we're seeing that third line, as you alluded to, starting to get momentum. I think Bob Dixon jumped up there originally to get out of everybody's way because of what we saw him blinking at Paglia. I don't know how he found a hole in between the 84 and the 88, to be honest.
How that wasn't a huge wreck. I don't even think these guys lost that much speed or momentum, but I thought they were wrecking the field going into turn 3, but they're totally fine. Dante Ricky coming across the line. I can't believe it.
I have no words. I was more focused on that third line. Next thing I know, the 28's down the inside line. They were all wadded up, nose to tail. I didn't think there was any space for anyone to go down there, but Paglia apparently found just enough room. Probably couldn't have fit a sheet of paper between his car, the rear bumper of the 84, and the front bumper of the 88.
That was the most spectacular wreck that we never saw. They are now single file on that bottom line, 5 deep. Tim Nofsker now, the 6 car on the outside line. These guys are starting to think about pit stops now, and that's what you're seeing. Everybody trying to get down to the inside. You want to be able to, not have to worry about being hung in that middle or outside line, because you can see it all the way through the pack right now. Everybody, even the guys that were in the middle line, they're trying to find gaps. They need to come down pit road soon. You don't want to be the car that's stuck on the outside line and in the middle of the racetrack trying to enter the pits.
I think we've got cars that may be coming down this time by. Question is, who are they going to be? Is you still got them double wide from about the 7th position on back. Nofsker, Metallic, Richard Martin stuck up there on that outside line as well. Long line of single file cars here on the inside line. So we'll see who's going to be the first ones to duck for pit lane. And let's not forget, folks, pit lane all season long has been a difference maker in the outcome of these races as well.
And a huge group of cars coming in. They all look to be pretty green. The number 24, the 88, they locked them up just a little bit. The entire half of the field there, I think that's actually a little bit more than half of the field there, got on pit road completely clean. Great job by all of these drivers on pit road. There is one now sitting sideways toward the back of pit road. That's not the place that you want to be in, but everybody gonna come in, top off with fuel, maybe take a couple tires and get outside of the pits and back up there with it. We'll have to see if there's any speeding penalties. As like I said, we did see a couple cars locking them up coming in.
Yeah, it was Jeffrey Elliott in the 711 that was facing sideways there on pit road. I think about 19, maybe 20 drivers hit pit lane that time. We got about 9 drivers that elected to stay out this extra lap, and now Nofsker going to lead that group onto the pit lane.
Looks like those guys will also make it into the pits pretty clean and green. 222 of Chris Emery. You saw him touch the grass there. That could very well be a black flag. But once again, all drivers making it cleanly into their pit stop. So it's going to be a matter of, did they get in quicker than the other group got in? Can they get off pit road quicker than the other group got in? Because right now, that first group has a lot more cars. So they're going to be able to make a lot more speed coming around the track.
And that first group that came down pit road did not all come off together. You're looking right now at Dante, Ricky, and Grant Wesley all by themselves. You got about another group of 6 behind them with Despirito, Mobbs, Melson, Seminara, Shelton, and Jeffries. They will obviously catch up to those 2 momentarily, but they all didn't come off together. So it all depends on that second group. As you said, if they're all able to come off together, they may all be able to maintain 1st through 10th in the running order.
Yeah, and right now, Ricky and Wesley with the clear advantage heading off into one as we see those other cars making their way onto the track right now. But those 2 cars are going to get grossly overtaken. I would say if it doesn't happen here toward the end of the backstretch, probably on the front stretch coming toward the tri-oval. But you see, as we mentioned, Tim Nofsker and Josh Metallic with an excellent run off pit road. they're almost up to speed. They might merge back into the traffic at close to the same speed that these other cars are at.
Oh boy, but they were not able to hold off Dante Ricky, and here comes Despirito with the momentum on the top side, 3 wide. It's going to be Ricky and Despirito, I think, side by side. When we get back here to the start-finish line, that's going to be your battle for the race lead after these green flag pit stops have finally cycled for the first time.
Yeah, and this isn't going to be much of a battle for the lead at all. And that happened right about the tri-oval, kind of where we predicted it there. Joe Despirito just had an easy 3 or 4 miles an hour that the inside cars just didn't have. That's 6 cars working together compared to the 2 and the other cars coming out of the pits, which really couldn't give them any sort of a draft advantage.
Caution. You know, we got a caution out on the racetrack. Second time today. Sorry to cut you off. Looks like Stefan Martel has had an issue up in turn 2.
You see him roll down off the banking. I did see his car parked up there. Not quite sure exactly what caused that. I actually think you're going to have to take it about back to the start-finish line to see where that wreck started there, Seth.
I was going to say, you know, a caution is going to be what drivers like Mark Paglia and Billy Elliser, who were behind the cut line coming to tonight's race, were going to need, because both of them had actually missed out on the lead pack. And, oh, yeah, you're right. It actually didn't have a thing to do with Stefan Martel initially. We're going to bring up the replay here. Watch the black 45 up there, second in that group of 3. He's actually the one that gets out of shape. A little contact, I think, between himself and the 55 of Sonny Tallman. He's through the grass, down through the apron of the front straightaway, and then back up and just clips the 57 of Martel.
Yeah, and honestly, that stinks for Martel, but I also kind of feel for Bobby Farrell in that situation. There, aside from jumping hard on the brakes after he saved that car, there wasn't a whole lot that he could do. And at the angle to which he was coming back toward the racetrack, I don't even think he would have been able to wrench that car hard enough to the left, again, without really slamming on the brakes to avoid further incident. He was just kind of riding out the momentum there. An unfortunate incident, and again, it looks like Martel in the 57 is going to get the worst end of that at this time.
Yeah, this was our old friend, the tri-oval, where this took place, and it was just so hard to tell what exactly happened there, because the bumpers all looked pretty well lined up between the 143, the 45, and the 55. I don't know if maybe there was like a little bit of a stack up there with them all being nose to tail that led to that. It was really hard to tell.
Yeah, I would bet that it was probably some sort of a stack up, just like you mentioned. Everybody's still trying to get up to speed. We did see one car that was a little bit farther back. He was trying to make his way up front. And without seeing the exact telemetry on, what all 4 or 5 of those cars were, it's really hard to tell. But again, I think that's just one of those sort of unfortunate incidents. Farrell was doing all that he could to try to save that car. But again, at the location that happened, at the angle at which he was trying to get back onto the track cleanly, unfortunately, the 57, he was just there. Now, we saw another incident which was a little different, a car coming off of pit road that merged back up into traffic. This is a lot different than that, Seth. That's not a car that was coming off of pit road trying to get up to speed. This was a car that was very much up to speed coming out of the tri-oval that, went through the grass, and it's very scary. You've run these super speedways before, Seth. To be able to maintain control of that car as it was very clearly sliding through the grass and down, closer toward the apron, all things considered, he did a pretty good job with that.
Yeah, there really is no way to be able to slow the race car down enough to be able to get back up onto the banking, unless, as you alluded to, you're coming off of pit road. That car just coming up to speed. You're able to then figure out, all right, I'm slow enough that I can then get onto that transition. I mean, it's such a huge difference between the flat area down there on the apron and that banking up there in the corner. And so it's very difficult to gauge, especially at the same time when you're trying to save that race car. I mean, Bobby Farrell, his first goal was make sure that thing didn't go down and pancake the left side and the inside wall. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to have a list of priorities. And obviously, his priority first was not to hit the inside wall. Then after that, it was to try and safely have his car go back up there into turn 1. And I'm sure as well on his mind, he didn't want to come back up onto the track so slow that he was going to lose out on being in a pack just in case a caution didn't come out.
Well, and here's the other thing, Seth. Had he gotten it woed down that much, you've still got cars coming, directly at you at speed. So that's why I say, if you kind of look at it objectively, uh, it really stinks for Stefan Martel. I hate to see that he got caught up in that, but objectively speaking, Bobby Farrell really kind of did the best that he could do with the circumstances that he was dealt in that situation. And, as much as it stinks again for Martel, another half a car length and there wouldn't have even been contact here. So it's just really, really unfortunate incident. But Seth, everybody is just pitted. We still have 27 laps to go. This, if we go green the rest of the way, could put us in a very interesting scenario toward the end of the race.
Yeah, I was really surprised when we came back from the replay to see all the race leaders down on pit road. Now, one driver that pit road was not kind to during that cycle was Chris Elliott. He did not come down pit lane. He instead is choosing the track position, so he'll be the race leader when we go back green. But everybody else going with fuel only, and the only thing I can assume is if we go green to the end, this is going to be some split strategy of when these drivers make their final pit stop. Because even with coming to pit road when they did, they're going to be somewhere in the region of about 10 laps short of making it at the checkered flag.
Yeah, I would bet some guys that are closer to the back of the pack, they might be able to get it within 7 or 8 laps. But you're going to have those guys that have been running up front, by all means, like you said, it's going to be about 10 laps. So about a can of fuel that they're going to have to get if this thing goes, finishes under green. I'm not entirely confident that will happen. I'm not saying that it won't. However, I have a feeling, we keep re-racking these cars and grouping them back up again. Just seems kind of like a recipe for some, more big Talladega crashes.
And to that point, if we remember back to last week, we were talking about how all 10 of our playoff contenders, they were doing so well staying out of trouble. And then we had those late race wrecks, which ended up putting both Grant Wesley and Jessica Shelton in rather perilous positions. We had Billy Elliser, who last week was involved in an early wreck and was able to salvage a decent finish out of that. So to your point, it's not over yet. Yes, these 10 playoff contenders still up there in the conversation, still have a chance of advancing into the round of 8, but it's not over yet.
No, it is most certainly not over yet. We're going to have a lot of racing left to go. I think we may see one lap to green as we come across the line this time. We'll have to see if those lights come out. But fuel strategy with now 26 laps to go. Again, this is something that these guys really have to start thinking about. We are only one more pit stop away from the end of this race.
I'm also watching these guys, and one thing I'm noticing that surprises me maybe just a little bit, all these drivers came down, they topped off the fuel tank. I thought maybe we'd see some drivers out here clutching. Oh, I'm seeing a couple drivers now clutching. Maybe they heard
they're
me.
Clutching.
Dave Melson, Tim Nofsky, you can see they're clutching. So I was wondering about the scenario. You were talking about, maybe at the furthest 5 laps short. Let's remember, as long as we get to lap 62 and the caution comes out, the race ends under yellow. And I go back to the Grant Wesley win when he was able to clutch just enough fuel under those 4 pace laps to make it to the checkered flag.
Absolutely. So it's not entirely out of the question. I would say it's a long shot at this point. I think even if we were to get 2 or 3 more cautions, I think they would still need to come down and get gas, just because the amount of fuel that these cars eat up to speed. You can make 20, maybe 21 laps, but if you're really competing toward the front of that pack, more realistically, it's 19 is that more comfortable sort of number.
And of course, as well, when you're out in front, you use up a lot more fuel. So we'll see if drivers are going to be willing to take their car to the front and stay there. If there's going to be a lot of jockeying of, all right, now you take a turn at the front and use up some fuel. I'm going to come back here and try and save, as Chris Elliott's going to lead us back to green. He's got Joe DeSpirito to his outside. Bernie Mobbs, you'll have Dodges lined up there in the first 2 rows on the inside, as he'll be third. Bob Seminara up in fourth. Dave Melson completing the top 5. Then it's Dante Ricky, Tim Nofsker, Grant Wesley, Josh Metallic, and Jessica Shelton in the top 10. Rest of your playoff contenders, Mark Paglia restarts in 14th. Billy Elliser back in 18th position, as the green flag is going to come out with a total of, I believe, 25 laps to go.
That is correct, Seth. It will be 25 laps to go at the line. Everybody very slowly and deliberately working their way. This is going to kind of turn into a sprint race. As we see the 9 and the 24, they're already door banging heading off into turn 1.
Now 712 did not get going of Bob Seminara. He was almost back into the grill of the 84 of Dante Ricky, and maybe that was by design because you see that Bernie Mobb's able to tuck up there in line, so maybe he didn't miss the shift. Maybe that was all part of the plan.
Yeah, there's just something in my gut, Seth, that tells me that was orchestrated. Those guys knew exactly what was going to happen there. The 088 Oscar, he's going to push it to the inside line. Already we have 3 wide at the front of the pack.
Dave Melson in the 13, no friends. He's stuck in the sucker hole. He's going to go to the back. He's got Elliott and Anofsker on the inside. Despirito leading the outside line. At least the leader. Maybe the top 2 in that third lane are clear for the moment.
You know, that actually kind of surprises me just a little bit, Seth. I kind of figured we might see at least a couple takers hop down there, you know, at least at the very front, in front of the 13 car, but that just didn't happen. Despirito, Mobbs, and Seminara now with the help of the 84 of Ricky and the 88 Wesley now able to easily pull away from that inside line, who is to the inside of that 88 of Wesley, now being led by the Chris Elliott car, number 9.
And Dave Melson still not able to get out of that middle line. He now will tuck in behind Donnie Garrett and Richard Martin, who move up to that second groove. Right now, though, your top 5 possibly clear here off of 4. Elliott still trying to fight on the bottom, but it looks like that inside line, they're just not quite getting the momentum they did earlier.
Well, and if you're thinking about playing the fuel strategy game right now and you're toward the half to 3/4 mark of the field, you're pretty happy seeing what those cars up front are doing right now. They're eating up a lot of gas. However, that being said, if we get, you know, a run here where everybody decides that they're just going to run in one single file, I don't think that gives you too much of an advantage with as high speed as they would be running farther toward the back of the pack.
And of course, we know that Joe Despirito getting his first win of the season last week. His goal right now is just carry momentum into that round of 8. He's already locked in, but he would love to get a second trip to victory lane, try and be a back-to-back winner. That's not been done yet. We've had 2-time winners in Wesley and Ricky and Nofsker, but we've not had anybody be able to go back-to-back yet this season.
Well, if we know, I'm pretty confident in saying I think if anybody can do it, it would be the 24 car. He's been so consistent and so fast. I mean, he's literally won 90%, if not more, of the pole positions on this season. He's just really fast, and we saw it last year too in the chase and the playoff format that they had going then. He didn't win a race, and then come time that it mattered, he was up there and he was winning races. I wouldn't be surprised to see it.
Jeremy Jeffries, Tim Nofsker, they were trying to make something happen on the inside line, didn't have the numbers. Now Donnie Garrett jumps down there with them. See if they can make any forward progress on the top 6 or 7. Too much space for the moment between that 77 and the 8. We'll see if they can close up, if they can actually get alongside of Jessica Shelton, Grant Wesley. That's 6th and 5th place at the current point in time. But at the front, they're continuing to chase the Florida boys there. It's Despirito, Mobbs, and Seminara, all former winners this season, lined up in the top 5.
Yeah, and that really, I don't know if you saw what happened there, Seth. That car length and a half lead that Garrett and the 77 had coming through 3 and 4 was entirely detrimental to that inside line as they worked their way into the tri-oval. They got to his back bumper at the tri-oval, but they couldn't do anything with him. They couldn't help push him and maintain the speed that they had. And I think that just kind of played a little bit of a role as you see the 88 of Grant Wesley. He's going to jump down there now. Maybe a car that those guys don't want to see leading up that inside line.
See if anybody else jumps down there with him. Obviously, I don't think the top 3 will be jumping down there, but I wonder if Dante Ricky might go down there instead. Wesley picks up Donnie Garrett. He'll get alongside of Ricky for the 4th position. And now at what stage of this race, Zach, do our playoff contenders, those ones that still don't know if they're going to be moving on or if they're going to be eliminated, at what point do they kind of start thinking about points, start thinking about their positioning to their competition? Because I know when they all took the green flag, the mentality is just go out there, get to the front and win this race. But at some point with it being an elimination race, you got to start thinking about points.
Oh, absolutely. Right now, they don't want those competitors to leave their sites. They know they're going to have at least one more pit. Well, they know they're going to have one more pit stop that they have to make. They know at some point it's either going to happen under green or under yellow. They're going to want to make sure when they come off of pit road, they still have those drivers in their sight to make it to the start finish line and for the finish.
And of course, as well as we stated at the start of this broadcast, we don't really even know, I think, when the checkered flag is taken, who those 8 drivers officially are going to be, just based off of the issues we talked about of 3rd in the standings, Chuck McClure, who if he's not given last place points provisional here tonight, he could easily be one of the 2 drivers eliminated. So we'll have to wait for the official word on that as things are getting dicey at the front. Despirito saw the momentum of Dante Ricky. He's dropped to the bottom.
I honestly didn't see that coming, Seth. I figured the Despirito car would stay with his teammates there in that middle line, but he jumped down there to block them and definitely stopped the momentum of that inside line. But again, his car is the fastest, and you can tell is that bottom line is now gapping that middle line.
And Dante Ricky right there, you could tell he's feeling boxed in. He thought about maybe going up to the outside of Despirito, but he's got Bernie Mobs to his outside, so no room to maneuver currently for that 84 Toyota.
No, but you know who's taking huge advantage of this? Look at Richard Martin. 3rd car on the outside line, tailing Bob Cinemanera and the 13 car of Dave Melson, as well as the 26 of Elliser. Those are some playoff contenders right there that, you know, we haven't talked about as much as like the 24. Those guys are very quietly putting together a very good race, and they're putting themselves in position that they need to be in coming up on this last set of pit stops to put themselves into contention at the finish.
Remember what I said about how points and position can change so many times in the course of a lap here? 8 laps ago, Dave Melson was dropping to the back, stuck in the sucker hole, and now he's up here in the top 10 again.
Yep, that's just the way that these super speedways work sometime. I'll tell you what, Richard Martin has been really impressing me tonight. We've seen him up at the front on multiple occasions. He is coming off some momentum. Big win in the Barebone Series on Monday night for Richard Martin. He's carrying that momentum with him still. We've got trouble. Just Shelton spinning to the inside.
Dante Ricky's going to get down there to the inside wall as well. Shelton hit hard in the 94.
No yellow.
I think we're still green.
No, we've got big
now we're going to be under
trouble in
caution.
turn 3.
Oh, it's going to be the big one. The big one's going to strike in 3 and 4.
Big trouble in turn 3. Multiple cars involved in that one at the end of the back straightaway as the 84 merged, made contact with the 088 of Tim Nofsker. It looked like 84 was in. So there's a minimum of 3 playoff contenders that we just saw get taken out in that wreck. We saw the 84, we saw the 94, we saw the 39 swept up in this as well. Huge storyline here, Seth.
Jerm Lewis, I saw Jeffrey Elliott, I'm sorry, John Godfrey, and I believe that the 55 of Sonny Tallman got collected up in that one. Wow. That's, again, it's the late race cautions. The playoff contenders, they survive up until the end of the race, and then Talladega says, no, I'm going to play a part into this.
Yeah, and the 84 looked like he was trying to get back up onto the racetrack, but the point at which he did that still saw other cars racing around him. Unfortunately, contact between he and the 088. 088 spun back up the track after that happened. Just really unfortunate thing to see. Hopefully we can see whether these chase or playoff drivers will be able to recover from this. Jess Shelton looked to have taken a really hard hit to the inside on the back straightaway. It looked like Ricky may have brushed the inside wall, but those cars in turn 3 that were all stacking them and wrecking them up looked to have probably gotten the worst of it.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised the wreck happened as long into the run as it did, because I was watching these guys side by side and there was very little room between front to rear bumper. Looked like bumper grab there between Dante Ricky and Jessica Shelton sends her down to the inside, and that car just caught air. And when those rear tires are off the ground, doesn't matter how hard you're hitting the brakes, that thing's not going to stop. And unfortunately, with those rear tires in the air, the momentum carried her into the inside wall. Some pretty extensive rear end damage on that Conchan TV Chevrolet. We'll now take a more in-depth look at the incident involving Tim Nofsker and Dante Ricky. Hard to tell there, Zach, whether or not that hit that Shelton took, if that's going to take her out of the running. We've seen at super speedways, if you get damage to the rear end, you might still be able in the draft be competitive.
Yeah, we'll have to see exactly how extensive that damage is. It was hard contact to the rear end. Assuming the sides and the front of that car are okay, she might be okay, but we'll have to see when she works her way down onto pit road what the crew is going to do to try to fix that machine. Again, I'm kind of curious to see what happens with the 39, the 84 of Dante. I saw the 6 of Wiley was torn up in that as well. Not sure how significant the damage on the 088 was. Just a lot of cars involved in that one.
Yeah, both of the Oscar Mayer machines of Wiley Coat and Josh Metallic getting involved. They actually made contact, which led to them being involved in the wreck. And we're going to go back and look here at the 84 of Dante Ricky because we got a pretty good shot of why he went down to the inside wall. And we were looking at the replay there with Nofsker. It looks like when Dante had the bumper grab with Jess Shelton, Seminara then got out of shape, came down into Dante Ricky's right rear quarter panel. That got him out of shape and then sent him down towards the inside.
Yeah, and it looked like all melee just kind of ensued from there. A really unfortunate event to take place at this point of the race, but everybody's going to be able to come down. Fuel mileage not going to be so much of an issue anymore, so that's going to be a non-concern.
Like Dante only made the contact there with the left side of his machine. And if you're going to give out a courtesy award, it probably, I think, would have to go to Jeremy Jeffries because he was in the middle of a 3-wide situation when Dante was coming back on the track, and the 8 car backed off to let the 84 car in line. So, and there was no caution at that point. So, Jeremy Jeffries being a gentleman there, but unfortunately, it still led to an incident over in 3, putting us under this our third caution of the day. And as you said, sets us up now in the range where fuel will no longer be a concern. It's now basically you got what you got and could potentially be a shootout to the checkered flag or the caution flag near the point of no return, depending on which comes out first.
Yeah, so we'll just kind of have to keep an eye on things, see exactly what's going to happen here.
And looking back at the Dante Ricky situation, he came into today's race 12 points ahead of the cut line. In order to advance, he needed to finish at least up inside of the top 17. Right now, Dante is being scored back, I believe, in the 28th position. We'll have to see how he cycles around after all the drivers come down pit lane when they want to under this caution period. But it didn't look like that hard a hit to the left side of that machine, but a lot of times it's really strange at super speedways. What doesn't look like a hard hit, depending on where it is on the car, can actually be detrimental to the speed of that race car. And other times, you could think, well, that car is done. Next thing you know, they're up there battling for the lead again.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's one of those things that you just can't test until they get it back up to speed. So we'll have to see exactly what does happen here on the restart, whether or not those cars will be okay to go the rest of the way or not. But again, Seth, as I said a little while ago, pit stops no longer an issue. However, every restart that we have from now on is going to get a little bit more and a little bit more aggressive. A lot of these drivers now, especially like you look at a couple of those chase drivers that were involved in that crash, they're kind of stuck in the back of the pack. They need to get back up to the front as fast as they can. And we also know there's a lot of other fast cars out there as well that could contend for this victory here today. I think we're going to see some more 3-wide racing here at the restart, Seth.
I have no doubt about that either, especially with the fact that it's an elimination race. I mean, when you have drivers that are in an elimination spot scenario, they tend to race a lot more aggressively. They almost race scared because they're not sure, especially at a track like Talladega, whether or not a move they make is going to cause a wreck, whether or not a move that somebody else makes is going to cause a wreck that involves them. It's all about position at these super speedways, and sometimes it's just so easy to guess wrong. And with it being an elimination race and 7 drivers coming into this event, easily able to be eliminated out of this first round, I agree with you. This restart, I think, is going to be a lot more aggressive, a lot more hairy. I think a lot less room's going to be given. And we're going to be having this restart with what looks like 11 laps to go. So right now, we're racing, of course, to the completion of lap 62. A caution at that point would end the race. But we saw, 3 playoff contenders involved in that wreck, so there's no saying that other playoff drivers may not find themselves torn up before we even get to that point.
Yeah, and it's kind of as you had mentioned earlier, until the checkered flag falls tonight, it's hard to make any predictions on exactly what's going to happen here with points because they are all in such close proximity to each other. Right now, I think we talked about him just a little while ago. That 43 car, Demar, he's sitting pretty up there on the outside of that front row. We'll see if him and Grant Wesley can't get something together here with the help of Donnie Garrett and see if that middle line can show some speed the way that we've seen so many times prior to now. Those Florida gang, though, lined up 1, 2, 3 on that inside line.
And again, using the caveat, we have to wait until the checkered flag to find out who officially is in and who is out. But if we eliminate the situation of Chuck McClure out of the picture right now, Paglia and Elliser would be in, Metallic and Shelton would be the 2 out. But a lot can change here with 11 laps to go at Talladega. Despirito about to get us back underway. Richard Martin, he's looking for his first win of the season. He'll be on the outside of the front row as the green flag is back in the air.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys that would like to get that victory. We know how hungry Donnie Garrett is. He hasn't been able to pull one off this season. Well, we see, look, the 26 car of Billy Elliser, who we thought, at the beginning of last week's race might get knocked out before his chase even got started. He's running on the outside line in about 10th position right now. He could stand to have a really good run today, too. Right now, coming into tonight's race, 9th in points? A win easily puts him in and completely reshuffles the complexion of the playoffs.
Got a lot of drivers up here that could get their first win of the season. Martin in the 43, Garrett in the 77, Melson in the 13, as well as Billy Elliser, Mark Paglia, Bobby Farrell, Chris Emery. I mean, there's a whole host of them up here that are still looking for their first checkered flag of the season.
Yeah, and these boys are hungry. We've heard these competitors talk about it in the interviews that we've done for them. It is so difficult to win in this series. Everybody really is that good. It's hard to beat guys. So winning in this series, it's a real accomplishment. So, even if they're not in playoff contention anymore, that is still a huge credit to your name right there to be able to bring home one of these victories.
Good news for Josh Metallic and Jessica Shelton. Looks like they are up to speed in the draft. And how about a driver that's making his debut here tonight? We talked about him in the starting grid. We haven't talked about him since then. The 86 of Jim Black, solidly run up inside of the top 15. And trying to see if he can get up there in his first start, maybe salvage out a top 10 as he pushes up the track there, almost into the door of John Godfrey.
Yeah, Jim's a good old school competitor here with Rolling Thunder Gaming. He's been here for a lot of years. He's one of my buddies that I like to talk to a little bit about, dirt tracks and sprint cars, talking about Williams Grove Speedway down there in Pennsylvania. Jim, really good guy. It's cool to see him out here having a really good run here tonight. He hasn't wadded it up, and he's still got himself a shot coming toward the end of this race, too.
We do have a couple of drivers that have lost the draft. Robbie Nisus, Germ Lewis have both lost the draft. Germ Lewis looks like he's got quite a bit of damage on his 616 from an earlier incident. So right now we've got 26 of our lead lap cars up in this lead pack, and that middle line continues to edge ahead on these straightaways. Grant Wesley trying to push Richard Martin out there. Now the inside gets the momentum through the turns, but it looks like at least coming down to the start-finish line, if things stay the way they are, that outside line is going to have the momentum by the time they get around here to the line.
Yeah, and it really looks to me, Seth, like that middle line has the momentum. Oh, man. I thought we were going to have another wreck there, as it looks like it was almost just a little bit of bumper grab in that middle line. But what I started to say there is it looks like that bottom line has that momentum into the corners, but that middle line having the momentum out of the corners. Is Despirito going to throw a block? No, not yet, but I see that coming. We've seen him bail out on his teammate earlier today, so I wouldn't be surprised if he were to try to do it again if he's trying to get himself a victory.
Yeah, but the last time we saw him bail out, he went from the top to the bottom, which is such a much easier lane to defend than going from the bottom to the top, especially here in the late stages where we know that more than likely that third lane could even come into play.
Yeah, to be completely honest with you, I'm just waiting for it. I'm waiting for that third lane to appear and just march its way up to the front. I wouldn't be at all surprised to see it happen. We've got a lot of cars here that are still clean and green that haven't been involved in an incident. That's the perfect making for a 3-wide storm at which we could see a lot of mayhem coming toward the finish of this race.
We also have to remember we're now at less than 10 to go, so any caution that comes out, it is race back rather than frozen field, and a lot of drivers here, depending on if a wreck happens, if they're towards the middle or the rear of the field, obviously they're going to want to keep their foot in the throttle to pick up positions, but at the same time, they got to make sure that they're going to avoid wherever the wreckage is going to be in front of them.
Yeah, they are racing back, by the way, like you mentioned. So it's, you don't want to wad your car up, coming toward a wreck, but at the same time, you don't want to give up too much either. That way you can still try to race it out coming toward the end.
Here comes that third line. It's Mark Paglia, Josh Metallic, Chris Elliott, and Jessica Shelton trying to make something happen there. Right now, they're 3 wide around the 10th position. Jim Black in the middle, Bobby Farrell down in the bottom. Paglia trying to lead the charge. The driver that came into this race, 10th in the playoff standings, having to try and race his way into the round of 8.
Yeah, and I'm really closely watching that third line forming right now. I'm kind of questioning whether or not they're going to be able to maintain momentum to get up there. But as I say that, they continue surging forward. We saw the 39 was caught up in that last wreck. We saw Shelton wrecked into the inside wall on the backstretch on that last wreck. But that tie line still making strides. And Donnie Garrett, he's going to pull up in front of Paglia and not even try to stop that run. I think he wants that push. He sees them coming. He wants to be that. Oh!
And there's a big wreck as Wesley is flipping on top of Paglia. Metallic is barrel rolling. Shelton is involved. Godfrey is collected. Nelson, and they're still wrecking up in turn 1. Continuing to barrel roll as Wesley. He got hit by Stefan Martel. That's at least 4 playoff contenders in that one.
And I don't believe the 24 has taken the yellow flag.
And if my calculations are correct,
this is the race for the win to the line here. 24 Despirito still holding it through the tri-oval. Demar got a bit of a run on that outside line, but it looks like Despirito at the line gonna get chase win number 2.
Now, I'm not sure about that, though, because we do not have the situation like last week. There is no lap down machine. I think we're going to get a 1-lap shootout here, to be honest with you.
Well, I certainly hope that I didn't just prematurely call it, but we'll have to see exactly what happens if we do not have a car that's a lap down. Hypothetically, as you mentioned, Seth, we may have only 3 laps of yellow flag. You might be. Well, we'll have to see what happens here. As long as nobody comes in and just parks on pit road, like you mentioned, this thing actually still could end under green. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, I think the scenario is race ends under caution if they reach the completion of lap 62. When they came around here to receive the caution, they completed lap 61. And with no driver a lap down, I think we're going to get a 1-lap shootout. But the tally I had of our playoff contenders involved in this one were Wesley, Shelton, Metallic, and Paglia. We'll wait and see if any others were involved as we're going to take a look at a replay. I mean, Grant Wesley took a wild ride up and over on top of Paglia, and then he just continued to get hit over into turn 1.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this does not look at all good for the 39 of Josh Metallic. He has parked his car behind the wall. That's going to relegate him to a 27th place finish. Coming in tied for 6th in points right off that cutoff line, with Shelton, Elliser, and Paglia still running. I think Metallic might be in some trouble here, Seth.
It could very well be. You're right. Obviously, we had both Paglia and Shelton caught up in this wreck, so dependent on if they're able to continue or not, he may have a lifeline there. The 26th of Billy Elliser, though, was able to get through, so that could be his playoff berth into the round of 8 saved. But man, the track just got blockaded up there. Sonny Tallman, Wiley Coate collected up. We had Stefan Martel, Chris Elliott, John Godfrey involved in this one. Donnie Garrett, of course, in the 77. I mean, there were a lot of drivers collected up in this one. And normally, the trouble spot is when a wreck takes place going into the corner. But this happened from the start-finish line all the way over to turn 1. So it was kind of like a double whammy for drivers at the rear of the field having to try and avoid.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Seth, I believe that might have been one of those instances of a little bit of bumper grab. The 28 of Paglia was definitely trying to help the 77 coming out of the tri-oval. It looks like a little bit of bumper grab, as you mentioned, turned him down into the right rear of the 88 of Wesley. He went airborne up into the fence. The 39 of Metallic taking multiple tumbles after contact with John Godfrey. Just, I I don't know. I'm more interested in seeing if we're going to have a restart, because now the more I think about it, as you mentioned, Seth, I think you're right. We may have a one lap shootout here, and it looks as though the competitors, they're doubling up. They're expecting that as well.
I think we should possibly get the 1 to green, if not this time by, then next time by. I think we're supposed to be going green with 1 lap remaining in this race. So I believe that the lights would stay on this time and go out next time around. Maybe we'll get an in-game green-white checkered, perhaps. We'll have to wait and see, as Josh Metallic in 27th. The thing about it, too, for Josh Metallic, he's not out of it yet because, again, as we said, we don't know the situation of Chuck McClure. If McClure doesn't get provisional points, then mathematically he would fall outside of the top 8 and he would be one of the drivers eliminated. And if Metallic can maybe maintain the gap he had between himself and Mark Paglia, which was 7 points, Metallic might be able to squeak out that final 8th position in the standings.
Maybe. But again, I think it's going to be entirely dependent on whether or not we do go back green flag racing here. Seth, now we've seen how these guys all run together over a long run. What we haven't seen yet this season is a green-white checkered finish. And why I say that Metallic's position is going to be largely dependent on whether or not we go back to green. If we do, with just a single lap, I think we're going to see a lot of hyper aggressiveness out on the racetrack. And while I don't want to wish any ill on any of our current playoff contenders, there's still room for them to fall back to Metallic at this point, hypothetically speaking.
There's room for that, and there's no opportunity to be able to combat that if it does take place. I mean, we've ended up seeing last week, Billy Elliser got involved in an early wreck, but he stayed out, he kept his car in the running. A lot of drivers got involved in wrecks, he picked up spots. There's no opportunity for that now. If it's a one-lap shootout, you're basically taking your wounded race car back to the start-finish line, and where you finish is where you finish.
That is exactly the way that this is going to play out. This time by, as they come through and out of the trial vote, we're going to have to hold our breath, because this is going to dictate whether or not this race finishes under green or under yellow. So, Seth, my next question to you, I know I've had a lot of these in the last couple minutes. We see Despirito leading the 43 of Richard Martin on the inside line. We see Bob Seminara with Bernie Mobbs directly behind him on the outside line. Now, traditionally speaking, these cars, they would give each other a little bit of room to get together and draft together to the finish. I don't think that can happen right now, because if you're the 712, you can't let up. You can't let up, because if you let up to let the 24 in, you're going to lose that momentum on the 43 car. Now, with a one-lap shootout, that just wouldn't happen.
No, there's no way. I mean, we've talked with these guys before. If it comes down between you and your teammates, what happens? Oh, we're competitors. We're going for the win. It doesn't matter anymore. The alliance is off. Seminara, he's locked into the playoffs. Despirito's locked into the playoffs with his win last week. So now they're just looking to pad up their playoff points going into the next round of the playoffs. Bernie Mobbs right now, he's fairly safe if he's able to stay where he is. And Richard Martin, he just wants to go to victory lane. And I want to bring up something here real quickly, too, because you talked about the fact that, these drivers towards the back are not out of it yet. I look at that 28 of Mark Paglia. I remember back about 3-4 weeks ago, Jessica Shelton was caught up in a wreck, had engine damage, was 29th on a late race restart. Mayhem took place on the final 2 laps. No caution came out, and she finished the race in 12th. So Paglia still has a shot here as long as he's able to make his way through traffic, through wrecks, if they take place on this final lap.
That is true. And it's going to be exciting to see them coming down to it. You want to know one of my favorite things about Talladega, Seth? It is completely unpredictable, but it is also the great randomizer. Look at some of these names that we have currently running in the top 10. Richard Martin having a great run. Chris Emery having a great run. Billy Ellisor, even though he is already in the playoffs, having a great run. Jim Black having a great run. Cy Jones having a great run. These guys that we wouldn't traditionally talk about so much at the front, they've got a real shot coming to the finish here.
Yes, Cy Jones has a chance to maybe, if mayhem takes place in this final lap, get his second top 5 of the season. Hopefully we'll get to interview him if that happens, as here we go. 1 lap shootout, 2.66 miles to decide it in the 12th race of the season. Despirito and Seminara get us back underway. We're going back to the checkers.
And we're going to have to make the best last lap call of our life, because this is cutoff race for the first cutoff of the Tally Challenge here at Talladega. Despirito now with the clear advantage on the inside line coming off of turn 2. He's got a little help behind him from the 43 of Richard Martin, but that outside middle line, they're making a surge down the backstretch. Seminara trying to make a run toward turn 3.
And those Fords, 3rd and 4th on the inside line, Emery and Jeffries, they want to go as well, as Seminara trying to get the push from Bernie Mobbs. He's just got to at least try and get to the right rear quarter panel, but he's not there. Despirito edges out ahead. Now he's got to block both lines off 4.
And it looks like Seminara got a little bit of a run coming into the tri-oval. Seminara is going to push up to the outside line. Car down on the apron as they come across the line. Despirito gonna get the win. Number 2 in a row.
Barely got it there at the line over Bob Seminara, and they all kept it together on that final lap. They were 3 wide, almost 4 wide, crossing the start-finish line. But man, oh man, if there was ever a time for the defending champion to get hot, here in the playoffs would be the time. He sweeps the first round of the playoffs here, and he's saying again, as I said last week, it was a statement win. It's definitely a statement win here this week of, if you're going to take the championship from me, well, I may not have won during the regular season, but I'm still that guy you got to beat.
And how unhappy are the rest of the field looking at the top 3 on the leaderboard? All 3 of that Florida gang finishing 1, 2, and 3. Seminara came across 2nd. Mobbs came across 3rd. And Seth, I don't mean to be braggadocious, but I believe I did say earlier, if anybody could pull off 2 in a row, I thought it was definitely Despirito here tonight.
You hit the nail right on the head, as Joe Despirito had 3 wins during the course of last season, 2 of them in the playoffs. And he's got 2 wins in the playoffs here, the first 2 playoff races. Looking at the way the drivers cross the start-finish line, it looks like, dependent on the situation of Chuck McClure, the 2 drivers that would be eliminated from this first round and not move on to the round of 8, Josh Metallic finishing 27th, Mark Paglia finishing in 23rd. They would be the first 2 drivers that would be out of the championship picture.
Yeah, and you hate to see it. You know, Metallic really struggled most of the season. We didn't see him in victory lane the way that we thought that we would. And after an unfortunate incident here in the tri-oval, that unfortunately, I believe, as you said, is going to take him out. Now, again, we will have to wait and see once they officially update what the points are, because we are just running off an unofficial finish in points at this time. We mentioned the Florida gang took the top 3 positions at the finish. Richard Martin, Billy Ellisor, they came in 4th and 5th. Chris Emery, Dante Ricky, Jeremy Jeffries, Jim Black, and Glenn Harris unofficially rounding out your top 10. Cy Jones with another good 11th place finish, followed by Bob Dixon, Jess Shelton in 13th, Bobby Farrell 14th, Rodney Sullins clocking in at 15th. 16th would see Chris Elliott, followed by Nofsker Martel, Godfrey Melson rounding out your top 20. Involved in incidents today, not of their own doing, Donnie Garrett, Wiley Coate, Mark Paglia, you know, a couple of those guys, again, as you mentioned, who needed, you know, really good runs, Paglia especially, marred down there in the positions 20th through 25th. Robbie Nisus got that 24th, Sonny Tellman in 25th. Grant Wesley, the hurt in the 26th before Josh Metallic, Jerm Lewis, and Perry Bond. So I'm glad that we didn't see a big wreck on that finish, Seth. I think, again, that just goes to show, as we've spoken on many times, how good these guys are, how much respect that they do show each other on the racetrack. And 1/100th of a second between the 24 and the 712. Bernie Mobbs essentially came across dead even with Richard Martin in 4th with that .102 deficit between themselves and the leader, but it does look like officially they're going to show Bernie Mobbs in third. Seth, what did you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one thing I want to just piggyback off of that you were talking about, disappointment to see those drivers eliminated this early, because this is something that you drove home in several of our past races, is the fact that these drivers that were up in the playoffs, they were up there for one specific reason, because they were the most consistent drivers all season long during the regular season. And, you see the pressure come on here during the playoffs, and no doubt about it, Talladega is one of those unpredictable tracks. The big one looms around every corner. You never know what the scenario is going to be, so you have to be prepared for all sorts of different scenarios. And unfortunately, Talladega playing a part here, looking like Paglia Metallic not moving on. Another driver that I'm looking at here, and maybe you can weigh in on this, is Grant Wesley, because I was looking when I saw that he was down in 26, and I thought, is he in trouble? He had a 7-point gap between himself and Mark Paglia and only finished, I think it was 3 positions behind Paglia tonight, so he is going to make it in. The thing of it is, though, in terms of momentum heading into the round of 8, Grant Wesley has finished outside of the top 20 now 2 races in a row. Is this a problem, do you think, for him as far as momentum heading into the next round?
Well, I think it's definitely a point of concern. I think that's something that's definitely probably going to be on the back of his mind going into the race next week. 2 consecutive bad races. Again, this is a win and you're in format. We've seen multiple times this season that the 88 is capable of getting that win to get in, but I also think that you don't want to be marred so far back in points that you have to be worried about winning your way in. As again, like tonight, we saw how unpredictable this super speedway racing can be, especially on a cutoff race. Now, uh, I'm not trying to speak ill of any drivers here at all, because I believe these guys have all done an excellent job making their way into the playoffs. But I do gotta say, unfortunately for Josh Metallic, I think that one's a little bit of an upset. If I was thinking fantasy and taking drivers, to the final race, he is probably one of those that I would have thought to have seen in that race. But unfortunately, that's going to bring his playoffs to an end tonight.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you in that regard, that point that you just made. We're going to be talking here with our top 3 finishers. And another thing I think that we're going to see next week is the urgency of going to victory lane, because with Joe DeSpirito winning last week, he was able to be as aggressive as he wanted to here tonight to try and pick up that second win, which he obviously was successful in doing, knowing that regardless of if he finished first or if he finished 21st, he was going to be moving on to the next round. I think that all the 8 drivers that are heading into next week's race, they want that luxury. They want that assurance. They want that calm feeling going into the second elimination race, knowing they're going to be battling for the championship when we get to that season finale.
Well, and also remember, that's going to put Despirito at a huge advantage while the points reset for next week as well. Probably getting bonus points, between the win last week and the win this week. We saw he had a huge lead, a huge point lead that he lost between the regular season and the open week of the playoffs. So I think going into next week, he's probably going to have even more of a pad than what he had coming in last week.
Great point. Let's see if we can get our top 3 finishers here. Let's kick things off with a driver we know is also going to be advancing into the round of 8. That's your 3rd place finisher here tonight, Bernie Mobbs. Hey, Bernie, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Sure do. How you guys doing?
Well, we're doing great. We had a heck of a finish that we got to watch, and you were part of it there. We saw that you and the 43 come to the line and had you guys score dead even, but gives you the advantage. I was thinking maybe it's that Dodge nose, but you were both Dodges, so that conspiracy theory is out the window. But, you came into this race mathematically at a shot of falling out of the top 8. But a solid run here tonight at 3rd. This has got to give you some confidence, I guess, going into that round of 8 next week.
Definitely does. He puts me in there, and got it running this year, so I'm hoping to continue the trend.
Now, Bernie, obviously, the first part of your goal is done. Now heading into that round of 8, we were talking about drivers' mentality going into next week, especially probably thinking, I've got to win this race so that way I have the assurance I'm going to be battling in that season finale. Is that what you're thinking, or are you looking at both races, just trying to be consistent in both of those to advance your way into the championship hunt?
Well, I'd love for a win to get it out of the way, but I'm gonna be safe still. I had a shot at this one if I'd got the right moves at the end there, but then I was trying, so I'm looking forward to next week and the weeks after.
Bernie Mobs, congratulations on a solid third place finish here tonight. I mentioned to Seth coming to that restart there. I was curious on seeing how that was going to work with Bob lined up in front of you and the 24 of Despirito leading the pack on the inside line. But it looked like for your Florida gang, all worked out just fine. No issues at all coming across the checkers.
I had a little contact from behind and kind of got pushed me into Demar there, but no wreck or anything. But it was kind of unfortunate.
Kind of unfortunate, but again, didn't turn out so bad for you. This really allows you to carry some momentum into the next round. You are coming out of tonight's race fourth in points. How comfortable does that make you feel as the field is whittled away by two more competitors?
It really helps, puts me up into the top 8, so I'm happy with that, but it's a long way to go still, and I'm not counting my chickens yet.
All right, Bernie, as always, real good to talk to you, man. Any shout outs or thank you sponsors that you have for us here tonight?
Well, shout out to the Florida gang. They're doing good. It's nice to draft with them. They're pretty safe. It's always fun. Shout out to you guys for putting on a great show. I watch it on TV the next day, I should say, and watch it, and I love it. It's great. Keep up the good work.
Well, Bernie, congratulations on advancing into the round of 8. We look forward to seeing what you do when we get into those next 2 races, see if you're going to be in that championship hunt. Great momentum going into that. Congratulations on third place run. Hopefully, we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you very much. I'll see you next week.
And let's now go down get our runner-up finisher, Bob Seminara. Hey, Bob, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah, what's up, fellas?
Well, I ask this almost all the time when it's an elimination race. I ask a certain driver, and I get different results in the answers that I receive. Coming into tonight's race, you had a really nice cushion between yourself and that cutoff line area. And when we looked at the fact that we had a couple of drivers retire before the midway portion, mathematically, you were locked into the next round on points. When you go into an elimination race like this, how much do you focus on points, especially with the fact that at Talladega, points and positions change so often?
Yeah, I wanted to finish second in points. I didn't think I could, even with a win, I don't think I could have passed Joe. So, with the way the points are stacked now, the way you are running in the playoffs, it matters. So I wanted a good run tonight, and I had to go to the back there, but I came back up front.
Yeah, I mean, we saw there on that final restart, you and the 24 duking it out on the final lap. What little bit more do you think that you needed to have to be able to get him? And were you surprised that, especially on this final restart, that outside line, the momentum didn't really seem to kick in like we're used to seeing on most of the restarts here at Talladega?
Yeah, it depends who's in the lines. Everybody gets different starts, and there were a couple of different guys up there. So it's just the lines, and Joe did the right thing staying on the bottom, but it was real close.
Hey, Bob, it's Zach up in the booth. Congratulations on another solid second place finish tonight. Hey, man, so we saw a little bit of an anomaly that we haven't seen a whole lot in the last few weeks, especially. We saw a lot of cars, the last 2 or 3 weeks really working that middle line. Even at points had the middle line having 2 lanes of traffic in it, sharing it. But it looked like that middle line just didn't quite have the speed that it's had in the past. What do you think might be attributed to that?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was the same set, but we had that one good run there where we were running that middle line there when we got single file, but it was pretty tight through, and it was hard with the third lane coming up. You can only get so far. It was tough. I don't know if anything was different or not, but it was definitely tough to get up there.
All right, gotcha. And were you anticipating that 24 was going to try to slide up in front of you, or did you think that he was going to stay down there and you two were definitely going to have to make that drag race down the back straightaway?
I was thinking he was going to stay on the bottom because you really want to be there. Just looking at the cars, that I figured that's what he was going to do. But we ran him hard, and Bernie had a good run, so it was a good win for him.
Well, that's going to put all three of your guys' team cars in the top four in points heading toward next week's run, the next round of the playoff shoutouts. Thank you, sponsors. Who do you got for us tonight here, Bob?
Yeah, FRN, you guys appreciate the call, and RTG, the admins, all the admins that put this on. It's it's a thrill to run every Thursday with all these racers. So we got a couple more races to go, and we'll be here next week.
All right, well, Bob, best of luck. Congratulations on a podium finish here tonight, second in the 12th race of the season, and we look forward to seeing you carry this momentum into the round of 8 and see if we're going to be seeing you battling the season finale for that championship.
All right, thank you guys.
Well, not only did the Florida gang finish top 3 here tonight, they also qualified in the top 3, so took them a little bit of time after falling towards the middle of the pack to work their way back up to the front, but they succeed in doing so, and the guy that goes coast to coast here tonight with his second straight trip to victory lane is Joe DeSpirito. Hey, Joe, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Hey, boys, I got you. Yep.
Well, man, it took you 10 races to get, or 11 races, I should say, to get your first win. Only took you 1 race to get your second one. Man, what a restart for you. You were able to hold off Seminara for this victory. Man, this has got to be such a momentum run for you heading into that round of 8, back-to-back victories.
Yeah, man, I'm feeling good. Yeah, that last restart there was Bob and I, 1 and 2. And, I got the win last week, so it kind of locked me in the next round. So, kind of decided to go head-to-head there and just see how it played out. And just got him by nose at the end there. It was a great finish.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, and you kind of answered it there about having that win in the bank last week, if that kind of changed the mentality of how aggressive you were going to be here tonight to try and see if you could go back-to-back. We head to next week. It's the first race of the round of 8. Are you in the mentality again where you want to find victory lane and head into that second elimination race worry-free, knowing you're going to be battling for the championship in the finale?
I'm hoping to do so. Last season, I won the 3rd race, and it kind of, made me feel good going into the 4th race to where I didn't have to worry anything. So, just gonna try to do my best again. Try to win. That's all. If it doesn't work out, luckily there's a little bit of a points buffer right now with all these bonus points. But try to do the same thing. Just rinse and repeat, man. Just try to stay up front.
Hey, Joe, it's Zach. Congratulations on 2 wins in a row. That's 2 weeks in a row now. You've started on the pole and brought home the victory. As you mentioned, you want to give yourself a little bit of a bubble. I've got to ask you, that's got to linger in the back of your mind every time that you start a race here at Talladega, the nature of super speedway racing and how random all the events can be at any given time. So how concerned are you at this point with 3 races remaining in the season, 2 of them being, 2 more playoff races and then the big race? We saw like tonight, Josh Metallic caught up in an incident not of his own doing, took him out of the chase. How concerned are you, realistically speaking, that that's a very real possibility that could also happen to you and kind of, blow your whole season wide back open?
Yeah, like you said, super speedway racing is crazy. There's always a possibility of that. You just got to analyze where you are and analyze the guys around you and kind of be aware of their driving styles and if they're good at holding a straight line and whatnot. We've been racing with the same guys for a while now, so I kind of know everybody's tendencies, and you just got to be ready for that big one. And it helps to stay up front and stay away from all that, and that's kind of what I've been trying to do the last couple races. And I've been watching all the wrecks in the rearview mirror, so hopefully that continues.
And speaking of the guys around you, that final restart saw you lined up on the inside with Richard Martin, with your teammates Bob Seminara burning mobs up top. Now, Seth and I were talking about it. We were like, well, I don't think Seminara and mobs can really check up. That way they can get in line together. But at the same time, Despirito can't hold off. How concerned were you going off into turn 1 that you would have those 2 teammates working together up above you that might give them a little bit more of an advantage over you come to the finish?
Yeah, like I said earlier, I had the win last week, so whatever happened at the end happened at the end. If Bob won, I would have been, fine with that. If I won, I'm happy too. So, whatever happened, and Demar, the 43, gave me a good push around the track there, and yeah, it was close at the end, but worked out. Got the W, man. Got to thank the 43 again for the push And like I said, got the W. I'm happy. Thanks, guys.
Congratulations on 2 in a row, Joe. I'm sure you've got some shout outs, thank yous, and sponsors that you'd like to acknowledge on the microphone here.
Yeah, I got to thank my guys, Bernie Bob, as always. Got to thank Demar for the pushing on that final lap there. I want to thank RTG, you guys at FRN. I want to thank everybody watching at home. Got some new fans watching. Got my Uncle Travis watching tonight. Guys at the post office watching. And, I just want to keep it up. Keep racing good. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Well, since the playoffs started, Joe DeSpirito has been the only one to go to victory lane. He becomes the 5th multi-time winner of the season and the only driver to go back-to-back so far this season. Congratulations there, Joe, on not only advancing into the round of 8, but taking, as you said, those bonus points in there as well. We look forward to seeing next week if he can go 3 for 3.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks, guys.
And the point standings are in officially here, Zach. And boy, talk about Talladega coming down to the wire. Down at the cut line, Chuck McClure and Grant Wesley, they were tied for the final elimination spot. Metallic 1 point back, Paglia 4 points back. So it is official. Metallic and Paglia are eliminated, but talk about razor's edge there for the 88 and the 17.
Yeah, and especially for the 17, the fact that he was able to have a really, really solid last couple of weeks, and not having started tonight's race, still being locked into next week. So I would think for him, he's got to be happy. Hopefully, he can get his issues figured out and be ready to go next week. But if you're Josh Metallic and you're Mark Paglia, I think that's just a little bit more of a kick in the gut, knowing the last 2 weeks haven't gone exactly the way that you needed to, and you've got another car that wasn't even able to start tonight's race that still outpointed you. So that's a tough pill to swallow. Still a little bit of hope left for Chuck, so he can work his way forward in the season. Jess Shelton and Billy Elliser. Now remember, like we mentioned earlier today, Billy Elliser was a driver last week that we thought could be eliminated after the first race after having some difficulties going a couple laps down earlier. He's sitting in a really good fifth position in points right now.
Yeah, and Jessica Shelton, who got involved in wrecks in back-to-back weeks, she survived. She's 6th in the point standings as things stand right now. Dante Ricky was caught up in a wreck here tonight, and he's going to be sitting 3rd in the reformatted points heading into the 3rd playoff race. Right now, it's going to be DeSpirito, Seminara, Ricky, Mobbs, Elliser, Shelton, Wesley, and McClure that are going to be your 8. And it's kind of a seesaw for these guys as well. Because yes, 2 of their competitors are now eliminated, but at the same time, those 2 competitors that are eliminated, they now become drivers that are out there on the track just trying to go to victory lane. So they're added to that list of drivers that are out there just trying to finish the best they can. So while it would seem like the road's gotten easier for these 8 that are moving on, in my opinion, it's just gotten tougher.
Oh, it's gotten much more difficult, especially like you mentioned, Seth. Grant has not had a really good last couple weeks. He's going to go starting next week below that cut line. Jess Shelton, kind of the same thing. You're starting on the bubble. So that puts in a tremendous amount of pressure on you, especially for a first race, knowing that you need to go out there and put points up on the board. You don't want to find yourself out in the first round. And, these guys are going to be working really hard to try to make sure that doesn't happen.
This is just the first of 2 elimination races that we're going to be having here this season. This has now whittled the field down from 10 to 8. Last week, it set the stage for tonight's race. Next week, it sets the stage for who's going to advance into those final 6 to compete for the championship in the season finale. Cannot wait for that one, Zach. But what a wild one here tonight. We were able to work the calculator afterwards, but as we said, Talladega is just so unpredictable. You have to wait until that checkered flag waves. And I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Yep, and I appreciate you, Seth, and everybody at FRN, all the fans watching at home, all the racers, admins, league owners, owners of RTG. We get a good show every Thursday night. It's a lot of fun to watch. We're going to start all over again next week with 8 more drivers and work toward cutting 2 more of them off over the next 2 weeks. So still a lot of really hard competitive racing left to go here, Seth, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, Joe DeSpirito locked himself into the round of 8 last week, follows it up with a second win here tonight. Will we see one of our Elite 8 lock themselves into the round of 6 next week? We'll have to wait and find out. Thanks everybody for tuning in here this evening. We hope you enjoyed our coverage of race number 12 of season 51 of the RTG Talladega Challenge. For Zach Fremont, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday evening. We'll see you guys next week as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.